Be more than human.
Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is J.R. Carroll. I am the author of the More Than Human novels, and today we are doing my top 10 best book ones in a series. A while ago I did a top 5 worst book ones of series that I continued and actually liked. So it got me to thinking, well, what are the best book ones? And for this, there's a lot more good than bad, so I decided to do a top 10. But let's get into two honorable mentions that sound very similar but couldn't be more different. First honorable mention is The Rising by Brian King. Amazing, shocking book one. I actually think book two is better, but book one, it's unlike anything you've ever read. If you haven't gotten into that kind of shock horror genre, it's a mismatch and it is amazing. And then you have Red Rising from Pierce Brown. A lot of people say that book one is really weak. Well, maybe it's weak compared to like the following books. Book three, five. The newest book. But I really enjoyed it. People are like, well, it's Hunger Games. Well, yeah, but it's better than Hunger Games, in my opinion. But yeah, The Rising and Red Rising, great, great books. I have nothing bad to say about them. They could have been on this list. And before we jump into the top 10, make sure you like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And if you know about my rankings, man, it's so hard for me to do rankings. So this is what I have today. If you ask me a week from now, they might be all mixed up. But number 10 is Tyranny of Faith by Richard Swan. And one thing you'll notice about these picks is they're all like, they have something different than most books. Tyranny of Faith, the style that it's told in, you don't get the main character's point of view. It's like his sidekick telling the whole thing in his apprentice, however you want to gauge it. But Richard Swan, it's a kind of a grimdark book, and it is one of these books where just the point of view just makes it a very interesting type of book. I have a review up, I think, for all of these, except for maybe number 5. But let's get into number 9. And number 9 is the first book in the Sandman Slim series. This book also, you start off with a character like rolling out of hell onto a trash pile. How cool is that, right? But it is a high stakes, very personal, in your face, shoot 'em up book one, and it is awesome. And it was Sandman Slim is one of those books where it's like the first book, the stakes were so high, like what were we gonna do? But I love the Sandman Slim books, especially when they go more ground level instead of just these huge, big battles. But yeah, book one is amazing, puts you right on the right track. And if you like these fast-paced, in-your-face, uncensored type books, the first book in Sandman Slim is for you. Now, number 8 is Jade City, and this was also a different type of book. It's it's a lower fantasy book, kind of also urban fantasy, pre cell phones and computers at the beginning. But yeah, it's just a different type where Jade kind of gives these people some kind of powers, but they're not OP powers, which I really enjoy. Fondly did a great job here. Upping just barely upping what Jade was capable of, keeping it very interesting, and again, not overpowering the characters. Now, number 7 is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. Lord Grimdark himself. He really inspired, probably the last 5 years or so has just been grimdark, and you can thank Joe Abercrombie for that if you're into grimdark. And a lot of people will say, well, this is the book, for Grimdark. And yeah, just great characters. Logan Nine Fingers, one of the best. But yeah, he mixes dry kind of humor with really dark themes. And Joe Abercrombie is just one of the best. And I really need to continue. I've done the first trilogy, but yeah, it might be time to start digging into more Joe Abercrombie. And number 6 is Expeditionary Force Columbus Day. This is, I think, might be the only sci-fi on the list here. But this book is an invasion story, and it is, again, different from most of your regular invasion type things. You have an AI named Skippy the Magnificent that is introduced into this book, and simply one of the greatest characters in literature, in sci-fi and fantasy, period. Skippy makes this book, and Craig Allenson might be the best dialogue writer ever. I think there's more dialogue in Expeditionary Force books than any other book series I've ever read. But he just does it so well. You don't mind just sitting there listening to people talk back and forth for so long. But yeah, the world building, the technology, and just knowing about the different levels of these different alien civilizations is so cool. Craig does a great job. It was so good that he was supposed to end it 2 books ago, but decided to come back out and kind of restart the series. So check it out if you like space operas. This is the best. Now, number 5 here is going to surprise some people, because if they know, if you've watched this channel for a while, you know how I feel about it. But I can't deny Gardens of the Moon is an amazing book. It's the first in the series. Stephen Erickson's prose, is one of the best in the world. His world building, second to none. Animander Rake, Krumpa, there's so many great characters. I really, really did love Gardens of the Moon. It just, after book 3, it just kind of started getting away. And that's where I kind of, got into my thoughts on the series. But Gardens of the Moon, one of the best of all time. Now, book 4 is Mistborn, The Final Empire. This, again, one of these books where if you hadn't read anything like it, which I hadn't, it is like so cool. Like the metals and everything, people are like, oh man, a super hard magic system. It's going to be weird for you to try to keep, where's everything and what's it doing? And maybe for the first 100 pages, it is like that, where you're just like, okay. But once you get it, it becomes like second nature. You're not even thinking about it. You're just going along for the ride, learning all these new things. And I really think that's where hard magic systems are good, and they really can be fun, is in book 1, when you're learning everything. Now, as you kind of go on, some of it can wear, but yes, book 1, amazing. Brandon Sanderson really knows how to set things up and how to build systems. Now, here we go. Top 3. This is going to be a controversial one for some people because a lot of people think it's the weakest, but I love The Gunslinger. Such an amazing book. It really got me hooked and propelled me through the Dark Tower. And what it has going for it, more than most other book ones, is as soon as you finish the series, if you reread it, it makes even more sense. And it's a whole new read if you read the series and then read it again. You can't say that about most book ones in a series. And yeah, Stephen King, top of his game, can't beat it. So come at me if you want in the comments. But yes, The Gunslinger is number 3. And then here's our final 2. And number 2 is A Game of Thrones, the first book in A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. Now, this book, I was coming into it knowing it's not finished. It may never be finished, but I was like, we'll give it a shot. I'm gonna go in, no preconceptions. I've seen the show, right? But it blew me away. There was just so much more to the world than what you got from the show, and it's so much intrigue. Nobody does multiple POV better than George R. R. Martin. That's where certain authors are great at certain things, but I think he is the top of the heap when you have a mass amount of characters and every character feels realized, feels like they're special, feels like they need to be there. There wasn't very many characters. I mean, there was characters I liked better than others, but yeah, it just felt like they all belonged there. Perfect. And Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire is definitely worth a read if you're just one of those people that's sitting back it's never going to be done, I'm not going to read it. Still worth it. Now, number one on my list could also be controversial because some people don't consider it a book one because it's a collection of short stories, but I consider The Last Wish the first book in the Witcher series. And it is the best starting off. I mean, and this will tell you how good it is. It is, some people don't consider it the first book, but most universally consider it the best book. I mean, so many great stories of Geralt and so many legendary characters are introduced in here, and they are done so well. I think Sapkowski might be the best at writing short books and short stories. We introduced Dandelion, Yennefer, Triss. I mean, the list. I mean, I could just keep going. Yop and Zigrin. I mean, so many characters that I just know their names right off the top of my head, just because Sapkowski is amazing at writing characters. The world expands and stuff, and I think a lot of people think when they think about the world of The Witcher, they kind of get sucked into the Witcher 3 video game, whereas the books, yes, the world gets big over the time, but it is such a character-driven story, not just with Geralt, but with all the characters. That's why it's hard for me to put The Last Wish any lower than number one on my list. Now, I want you to tell me, where did I mess up on this list? What am I missing? What are your top 10s in this thing? Hey, check if you want to argue about it, come into the Discord. I'll leave that link below. And more importantly, be more than human.